They called her name at the register, and the clerk looked up. She set her card on the counter. A simple thing, a gesture made 1,000 times in that store by 1,000 different people. But this time, the clerk looked at the card, looked at her, and did not move. "I'm going to need another form of payment." She asked why. "The system's flagging it. You'll need to call your bank." She said she had just used the card that morning. He said it again, slower, the way a person speaks to someone they do not believe. "You'll need to call your bank." The line behind her grew. People shifted. Someone sighed. She stood there, card in hand, and no one said a word. Not one person in that line said a single word. By the time the doors behind her opened again, 2 men in dark suits would be standing in that store, and the clerk's face would go the color of chalk. Subscribe and tell me where you're listening from in the comments. Rewind 43 minutes. Her name was Celeste Beaumont, and Celeste Beaumont had driven herself to the Harrison Square Shopping Center in Columbus, Ohio, on a Tuesday morning in September, which was something she had done every third Tuesday for the last 11 years. It was not remarkable. It was not special. It was Tuesday, and the list on her refrigerator said eggs and bread and hand soap, and so she went. She drove a dark blue sedan, the kind that does not announce anything. She wore a cream-colored blouse and dark slacks, the kind of clothes that do not announce anything either. She had a briefcase in the back seat, because she had a meeting later. She had a travel mug in the cup holder, because she had always preferred her. Coffee strong and her mornings quiet. Celeste Beaumont was 61 years old. She had 3 children, 2 of them grown, and living in cities she visited whenever she could. She had a sister in Atlanta. She had a mother she still called every Sunday evening, not from obligation, but because she wanted to. She had a garden in her backyard where she grew tomatoes she was unreasonably proud of, and herbs she almost never remembered to use. She had, in her 29 years of federal service, overseen the protective details of 2 sitting presidents of the United States, 1 vice president, and 3 secretaries of state. But nobody in the Harrison Square Shopping Center knew that. She was, to the clerk at Register 7, a woman with a card that he had decided not to run. His name was Darren, according to the tag on his vest. Darren was 24 years old and had worked at that store for 7 months. He was not, in the strict sense, a cruel man. He was, however, a careless one. He had looked at Celeste Beaumont, and he had made an assessment so fast that he had not noticed he was making it. He had looked at her card, then looked at her, and somewhere in the distance between those 2 glances, something had gone wrong. He had not called his manager. He had not checked the system. He had not run the card at all. He had simply told her the system was flagging it, and he had said it. With the confidence of someone who is certain they will not be contradicted. There was a woman 2 people behind Celeste in line named Rhonda. Rhonda was 47. She had seen what happened, and she did not like it. She had a narrow, sharp quality to her attention that missed nothing. She had watched Darren look at that card and look at that woman, and she understood. The way you understand something in your stomach before you understand it in your mind. That the system was not flagging anything. She did not speak yet. She filed it away. She watched. 1 register over, a teenager named Marcus was bagging groceries. He had earbuds in, but only in 1 ear. He saw enough. He pulled out his phone. Celeste asked again, quietly, if Darren could try running the card. Darren said he had tried. He had not tried. She asked if he could call his manager. Darren said the manager was busy. There were 4 lanes open. The manager, a woman named Patricia, was at her station by the service desk, 17 feet away, visible and unoccupied. Celeste looked at Patricia. Patricia made brief eye contact and looked back at her screen. True wealth, somebody once told Celeste, is not what you accumulate. It is what you give back when nobody's watching. She had spent most of her adult life giving back in rooms where nobody was watching, rooms with no windows, rooms where what happened inside them was never meant to be spoken of outside them. She had done her work without recognition and without complaint, because the work was the work, and that was enough. She was not the kind of woman who raised her voice in a grocery store. She was also not the kind of woman who left without her eggs. She said a third time that she would like to speak to a manager. Darren leaned back slightly and crossed his arms. He said he could hold her items while she called her bank. He said it would probably just take a minute. There were 9 people in line behind her now. A few of them had already moved to other lanes. The ones who remained were watching the way people watch things they have decided not to involve themselves in. A man in a red baseball cap near the end of the line said, loudly enough to hear, that some people just needed to be ready to pay before they got to the register. Rhonda turned around and looked at him with the expression of a woman who has lived long enough to no longer moderate her reactions to foolishness. She did not say anything. She simply looked at him for 3 full seconds and then turned back around. That is when the doors opened. In the parking lot 43 minutes earlier, Celeste had been sitting in her car, finishing the last of her coffee, and reading 3 messages on a phone that had 2 layers of encryption she did not explain to people. She had a call that afternoon. She had a briefing the next morning. She had a Tuesday errand list and a Tuesday errand store, and she was almost out of hand soap. She did not know that 2 members of a rotating federal detail had parked 4 spaces to her left. She did not know because she was no longer in the business of knowing things like that in shopping center parking lots. She had retired 8 months ago, quietly, the way she had done everything. There had been a small gathering, a framed commendation, a handshake from a deputy director who said her name with the kind of weight reserved for things that matter. And then she had driven home in her dark blue sedan and put the commendation on the bookshelf next to her sister's wedding photo and a ceramic mug one of her grandchildren had painted for her at a school fair. The 2 agents who had parked 4 spaces to her left were named Whitfield and Osei. They were not on duty. They had recognized her car. They had decided, because old habits are old habits, to go in. They were in the cereal aisle when Marcus, the teenager with 1 earbud in, spotted them. Not because of what they were wearing, because of how they stood. Because of the way their eyes moved when they entered a room. Because he had grown up watching his uncle, who had done 8 years in federal law enforcement, and he recognized the posture. He kept his phone in his hand. He moved toward Register 7. Darren was in the middle of suggesting, for the 4th time, that the problem was probably on her bank's end, when the doors parted. They did not rush. Whitfield and Osei were not rushing men. They covered the distance from the entrance to register 7 a walk that was somehow both unhurried and, in the way that a river is unhurried, entirely unstoppable. Whitfield was 6'1". O.C. was shorter by 2 inches but wider through the shoulders. They both wore dark jackets. They both had the particular quality of stillness that belongs to people who have spent years in rooms where stillness was a professional requirement. Darren saw them when they were 3 register lengths away. He saw the way they were walking. He saw the way they were looking at him. He did not know who they were yet, but the body understands certain things before the mind is ready to. His arms uncrossed, Whitfield reached the counter and stood beside Celeste. He did not immediately speak to Darren. He said to Celeste, in a voice that was warm and specific and private, "Director, we saw your car. Everything all right? Director." Darren heard the word. He watched Celeste Beaumont turn to look at the 2 men, and he watched something in her posture, something she had been holding very carefully in place for the last 11 minutes, ease. "Just slightly," she said. "I'm having a little trouble at the register." O.C. looked at Darren, not aggressively, the way a surveyor looks at a piece of land he is about to assess. He said, "Is there a problem?" There was no problem. There was no problem at all. Darren's hand found the card reader, and the card went in, and the card, of course, went through. 11 seconds, $14.67. The machine beeped and printed, and the receipt came out, and Darren set it on the counter and did not look up. Marcus had filmed 12 minutes of it. He uploaded it from the parking lot. His caption said 3 words. He did not need more than 3. By the following morning, 140,000 people had watched the video. By the afternoon, 300,000. By the end of the week, the number was past 4 million and rising, and several of those 4 million were journalists, and several of those journalists had made phone calls, and several of those phone calls had been answered. The store's corporate communications office released a statement that used the word regrettable 4 times and the word sorry 0 times. This did not go unnoticed. Patricia, the manager who had looked away, submitted her account of events in writing to the district manager. Her written account contained several details that were not supported by the security camera footage. The security camera footage was not ambiguous. The district manager, whose name was Gary Hollenbeck, called his regional director, whose name was Vance Caldwell, and Vance Caldwell called the VP of Operations in a conversation that lasted 47 minutes and ended with several decisions being made. Darren was suspended pending review. The same afternoon, the video crossed 1 million views. The review concluded 11 days later. Marcus, the 17-year-old who had filmed it, was interviewed by 2 local television stations and 1 national outlet. He wore his work vest for all 3 interviews, which was not planned, but which everyone noticed. He said, simply, that he filmed it because it did not seem right, and that he had not been sure what to do but had decided that doing something was better than doing nothing. He said his uncle had told him that once. He said he thought about his uncle a lot. Rhonda was in 2 of the interviews as well. She said, on camera, that she had known, from the moment she saw it, that it had nothing to do with the card. She said she should have spoken up sooner. She said that directly, without softening it. She said, "I should have opened my mouth, and I didn't, and I've been thinking about that all week. She said it was the kind of thing that sits with you. She said it was the kind of thing that should sit with you. The man in the red baseball cap did not give interviews. Celeste Beaumont gave one. A single television appearance, brief, conducted with the same precision she had brought to everything else in her life. She sat across from a journalist who had done her research, and she answered questions with the economy of someone who has spent decades in rooms where words had to mean exactly what they were meant to mean, and nothing more. She said she had not wanted to make a scene. She said she was glad the young man had filmed it. She said she had known, standing at that register, exactly what was happening, and exactly why, and she had chosen to remain calm because she was a professional, and because she was tired, and because she had spent 29 years protecting people in a country she believed in, and she was not going to let one Tuesday in a grocery store make her forget that. She said it quietly. The journalist did not ask a follow-up question. There was nothing to follow up. The store announced, 14 days after the incident, that it would be partnering with a national civil rights organization to redesign its customer service training protocols. The partnership was named the Beaumont Standard. It was not a gesture Celeste had requested. It was a gesture the organization made because it had read the room, finally, the way rooms eventually get read. The Beaumont Standard would be implemented across 1,100 stores in 37 states. It included mandatory bias recognition training, a new customer escalation process that did not involve the customer waiting while the employee decided whether to comply, and a zero-tolerance policy for what the documentation called preemptive non-service, which was the careful, clinical way of describing what Darren had done at Register 7. Vance Caldwell, the regional director, gave a press statement that used the word sorry 4 times and the word regrettable 0 times. This, too, was noticed. Gary Hollenbeck, the district manager, attended the first Beaumont Standard training session in his district. He sat in the 3rd row. He did not say much. He took notes. Whitfield and Ossie were back on rotation within a week. They did not speak publicly about the incident. They did not need to. 6 months later, on a Wednesday afternoon, Celeste Beaumont walked into the Harrison Square shopping center and filled a basket with eggs and bread and hand soap. She went to Register 4, which was staffed by a young woman named Dina, who was 19 years old, and had been through Beaumont Standard training and who greeted every customer with the same open attention she had been trained to give. Celeste set her card on the counter. Dina ran it without comment. It went through in 8 seconds. She bagged the eggs herself so they wouldn't break. Celeste drove home in her dark blue sedan with the travel mug in the cup holder and the briefcase in the back seat and the grocery bag on the passenger floor. She pulled into her driveway. She brought everything inside. She put the eggs in the refrigerator and the bread on the counter under the bathroom sink, and the hand soap under the bathroom sink. Then she went out to her garden and checked on her tomatoes, which were doing well, and stood there for a few minutes in the September afternoon without doing anything in particular. Her granddaughter, who was 8, had given her a drawing that was taped to the inside of the kitchen window facing the garden. It was a drawing of a woman standing very straight. Underneath it, in uneven printed letters, her granddaughter had written, "The strongest lady I know, Celeste had never told her what she used to do for a living. She didn't need to. The part that stays with me isn't the agents walking through the door. It isn't even the 4 million views or the Beaumont Standard being printed and laminated and hung in 1,100 break rooms across 37 states. It's the card, the way she set it on the counter, the way a woman with 29 years of the most demanding work this country asks of a person set a $14 card on a grocery store counter and asked, quietly, 3 times, to be treated the way anyone in that line would have been treated. She didn't argue. She didn't announce herself. She had every reason to, and she didn't. Because she was a professional. Because she was tired. Because she had decided long before that Tuesday who she was going to be in moments like that. Here is what I keep coming back to. There were 9 people in that line. 9 people who saw what was happening and stayed quiet. 9 people who looked away or sighed or moved to another register. Most of them probably went home that afternoon and would have told you, honestly, that they were good people, decent people. People who would never do something like that. But there's a difference between not doing something and doing something. And Rhonda knew it standing there on camera, saying she should have spoken up sooner. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain it away. She just said it plainly. I should have opened my mouth. So here is what I want you to think about today. Not what you would have done in some other version of that moment. What you have actually done in the real moments, in the ones that have already happened, the ones you walked past, the ones where you shifted your weight and looked the other way and told yourself it wasn't your business. That's the question. One word in the comments. One honest word. If you've never been to this channel before, subscribe, because the stories we tell here are exactly this. Quiet people, invisible power, moments that don't announce themselves. And what happens when the world finally catches up with who someone always was. Next time, a janitor at a university law school quietly studies the cases he cleans up after. For 17 years. And then one day, a professor he has never spoken to walks into a hearing room where the janitor is the one sitting at the table. I'll see you there.